You're at a coffee shop catching up with a friend. They ask you to help with a last-minute favor. You say, "No, I can't today." Their faces harden. Why not? They press, eyes narrowing. Your heart races. You stumble into a flurry of excuses. "I'm swamped at work and I've got this family thing," and you over-explain, justify, apologize. Their frown softens, but you feel smaller, like you've shrunk inside yourself. Why? Because your explanations are their control over you. How many times have you explained yourself to someone who didn't deserve it? Stay with me, because this is about taking back your power. You know the feeling. You send a text saying you're busy, then spend 10 minutes justifying why you didn't reply sooner. At work, you over-explain a decision to avoid a colleague's or your senior's judgment. Even though you know you're right, you say sorry for setting a boundary, like it's a crime to protect your own space. Every time you do this, you're not being polite. You're handing over a piece of yourself. It's not kindness, it's self-betrayal. And it's exhausting, isn't it? That sinking feeling when you walk away, knowing you gave away more than you meant to. You feel drained, resentful, sometimes invisible, like you're fading into someone else's story. Why do we do this? Why do we explain ourselves to people who don't even listen? Carl Jung had an answer. He called it the persona, the mask you wear to be liked, to fit in, to avoid conflict. It's the version of you that smiles when you're screaming inside, that explains when you want to walk away. Jung said, "The persona is the mask you wear to be accepted, but it suffocates your true self." Think about it. Every time you over-explain, you're polishing that mask, trying to seem good or reasonable. But at what cost? You're trading your authenticity for approval. You're letting others decide who you are. And deep down, you know it's not worth it. That's why you feel so hollow afterward, like you've lost something you can't name. Here's the truth. Over-explaining isn't just a habit. It's a trap. A trap set by a world that thrives on your predictability. People push for explanations because it keeps you in their game, reacting, justifying, proving yourself. But you don't owe anyone your reasons. Not your boss, not your friend, not even your family. Your choices are yours. And the moment you stop explaining, that trap snaps shut, on them, not you. Because this isn't just about saying less, it's about becoming more. In the next part, we'll dive into what over-explaining is really costing you. Not just your time, but your energy, your essence. And we'll uncover what Jung knew about why this habit is so hard to break. Stay with me. Everything's about to change. Let's talk about what over-explaining is really costing you. You think it's just a few words, a quick justification to keep the peace. But every time you explain yourself, every apology for saying no, every long-winded defense of your choices, you're losing something far more precious than time. You're losing your energy, not just physical energy, but what Carl Jung called psychic energy, the vital force that fuels your mind, your creativity, your very essence. Every explanation you give is like poking a hole in your soul, letting that energy leak out. And trust me, those leaks add up fast. Have you ever felt bone-deep exhaustion after explaining yourself to someone who didn't even care? It's not just tiredness. That's your life force draining away. Picture this. You're at work, and your boss questions a decision you made. You spend 20 minutes crafting the perfect email, justifying every detail to avoid looking incompetent. You hit send, but instead of relief, you feel hollow. like you've run a marathon with nothing to show for it. Or maybe it's a friend who texts, upset that you missed their call. You type out a paragraph of excuses. Work, errands, stress, only to feel heavier when they reply with a curt, "Okay." That's your psychic energy leaking away, drop by drop, with every unnecessary word. Jung described this pattern as psychic entropy, the gradual dissolution of your inner order into chaos. Each justification fragments your sense of self, scattering your attention across 1,000 pointless concerns. But here's what Jung discovered that most people miss. Explanations create psychological debt. Every time you justify yourself, you're unconsciously accepting that your choices need external validation. You're entering into a transaction where your autonomy is the currency, and their approval is what you're buying. But the exchange rate is rigged. You give away your sovereignty piece by piece, and what do you get back? Temporary peace that dissolves the moment the next demand arrives. Jung called this the tyranny of the collective unconscious, the invisible pressure to conform to others' expectations, even at the cost of your own psychological integrity. Jung understood the psyche as a closed energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action pulls from that finite well. When you over-explain, you're not just spending energy, you're investing it in depreciation. It's like pouring water into a cracked bucket. The more you explain, the less you have for what matters. Your dreams, your passions, your own inner voice. And here's the kicker. That depletion doesn't just make you tired. It makes you susceptible to what Jung termed as psychic infection, absorbing others' anxieties, doubts, and neuroses as your own. Think about the people who push for your explanations. The colleague who demands to know why you can't stay late. The friend who needs a full breakdown of why you're not free this weekend. They're not merely asking for words. They're performing what Jung called shadow projection. They're unconsciously dumping their own insecurities, their need for control, their fear of abandonment onto you. And when you explain, you become their emotional container. You absorb their psychological waste while they walk away clean. Jung warned that this kind of drain creates participation mystique, a psychological fusion where you lose track of where you end and others begin. But it doesn't have to be this way. What if you stopped the leaks? What if you plugged the holes and kept that energy for yourself? In the next part, we'll uncover the dark truth about why people demand your explanations and how they're using them to maintain psychological dominance over you. Stay with me, because Jung's insights are about to flip this game on its head. If this is resonating with you and making you see your patterns differently, hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything as we dive deeper into Jung's transformative insights. Let's pull back the curtain on something darker. You think your explanations are just words to clear the air, to be understood. But what if they're weapons used against you? Every time you justify yourself, you're stepping into a Jungian concept known as power complex, a psychological structure designed to keep you reactive, compliant, and small. People don't demand your explanations because they care about your reasons. They demand them to maintain psychological colonization. It is the process of invading your mental space and establishing outposts of control. Who in your life demands your explanations? And why do you keep giving in? Picture this. Your boss emails, questioning why you didn't finish a task by Friday. It's their poor planning, but you feel the heat. You type a long reply, detailing every obstacle, every effort, just to avoid their disapproval. They nod, satisfied, but you're left rattled, second-guessing yourself. This is called complexification in Carl Jung's philosophy. People around you are activating your inferiority complex, that wounded part of you that fears being seen as inadequate. Your explanation isn't clarification, it's capitulation to their psychological dominance. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life." Explaining is your unconscious response to their power play, and it's keeping you locked in their psychological matrix. Let's break down how this manipulation works. First, there's guilt induction. You owe me an explanation, they imply. If you don't justify yourself, you're selfish, cold, uncommitted. This activates what Carl Gustav Jung called the guilt archetype. It is a primal fear of being cast out from the tribe. That colleague who sighs when you say no to overtime is performing emotional blackmail, triggering your ancestral terror of abandonment. And you fall for it, explaining yourself to prove you're not the villain in their narrative. But here's Jung's radical insight. Their guilt is their shadow material, their own rejected selfishness, projected onto you. Then comes temporal manipulation. "I need to know why now," they demand, as if your reasons are their emergency. Carl Jung says this is chronos possession. They use time pressure to override your natural boundaries. Your partner asks why you need space, their tone sharp, impatient. You scramble to explain, heart pounding, because their urgency feels like your crisis. But it's not. Their need for control is masquerading as temporal necessity. Jung saw this as archetypal inflation. They're unconsciously identifying with the tyrant archetype, demanding immediate compliance. Why do you let their artificial deadlines dictate your response rhythm? The sneakiest tactic? Social comparison. Everyone else explains themselves, they say, exploiting a Jungian concept named herd conformity. They're activating your fear of being the deviant, the outsider, the one who doesn't follow the unwritten rules. Your coworker hints that top performers always clarify their decisions, triggering your imposter syndrome. This isn't about fairness, but about a psychological warfare. They're weaponizing your desire to belong, forcing you into explanatory performances to prove your worthiness. Jung knew that those everyone else's they compare you to are equally trapped in this cycle of justification, each one afraid to break the chain. This is the architecture of control guilt, urgency, comparison, all designed to keep you explaining, justifying, proving yourself. But what if you dismantled this structure? What if you chose a different response entirely? In the next part, we'll explore the revolutionary power of conscious silence and how it completely rewrites the rules of human interaction. So, you've seen the trap. How your explanations let others control you, draining your energy, keeping you reactive. Now, imagine flipping the script. Instead of justifying, apologizing, or over-explaining, you choose silence. Not the silence of defeat or avoidance, but what Jung called active silence, a conscious, powerful refusal to participate in psychological manipulation. Silence is sovereignty, not weakness. It's you taking back the reins, refusing to be a canvas for someone else's chaos. Jung knew this power. He saw silence as the gateway to individuation, the journey to become who you really are. What would happen if you stopped explaining just for one day? Let's find out Imagine your colleague pushes you to explain why you can't take on their last-minute task. Instead of stumbling through excuses, you nod, say, "That doesn't work for me," and walk away. Their confusion hangs in the air, and it's their problem, not yours. There comes a Jungian concept called psychological aikido, using their own force against them. They expected resistance they could push against, justifications they could dismantle. Your silence offers nothing to grip, nothing to argue with. Their manipulation technique simply dissolves. Jung said, "In silence, you hear your true self for the first time. When you stop explaining, you create space to listen to you." This silence isn't just about closing your mouth. It's about libido conservation, and it means redirecting your psychic energy from external validation to internal development. Every explanation you skip is energy you keep. Energy to engage in active imagination. The Jungian term, which means the practice of consciously dialoguing with your unconscious mind. Think of it like clearing a cluttered room. When you stop filling your mental space with justifications, you make room for genuine insights, creative breakthroughs, authentic self-knowledge. Jung discovered that most people never hear their inner voice because it's drowned out by the constant noise of explaining themselves to others. But let's be real. Silence triggers social anxiety. It's uncomfortable, especially at first. You say no without explaining, and the guilt complex activates. Am I being rude? Will they hate me? Your heart races when your boss raises an eyebrow, expecting reasons you don't give. Carl Jung termed this discomfort individuation anxiety, the psychological growing pains of separating from the collective unconscious. That guilt, that fear, it's the death throes of your people-pleasing persona, the mask that's kept you chained to others' expectations. Jung said, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain." This discomfort signals your psychological evolution. Here's how you start practicing conscious silence. Don't explain. Pause. Breathe. Respond from your center, not your complex. When your friend demands why you're not free, try, "I'm prioritizing myself today." When your coworker presses for reasons, say, "That's my decision," and move on. Jung would call this ego self-alignment. You're basically acting from your authentic core rather than your reactive patterns. These aren't cold responses. They're clear boundaries, protective of your psychic space. The more you practice, the more you align with transcendent function, the bridge between your conscious and unconscious minds. But here's what Jung warned. Silence shakes up the system. People used to your explanations will experience projection withdrawal. They can no longer use you as a dumping ground for their psychological material. They'll call you distant, selfish, arrogant. Why? Because your silence forces them to confront their own shadow, and not everyone's ready for that confrontation. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you hold your ground, how silence catalyzes your psychological transformation. You've stopped explaining. You've chosen silence over justification, sovereignty over reactivity. Now, something profound begins to stir. Jung calls this the transcendent function. It is the psychological mechanism that bridges your conscious ego and unconscious self. It's quiet at first, like a whisper in the stillness. But it grows stronger every time you hold your ground. This is exactly what Jung meant by individuation, not just personal growth, but the fundamental reorganization of your psyche around your authentic center. What does it feel like to become psychologically whole? Let's dive in. You're at a family gathering, and someone questions your career choice, their tone dripping with judgment. In the past, you'd have launched into a defense, explaining your passion, your plan, your worth. But now, you smile, say, "It's what I love," and change the subject. No justification, no apology. This is called ego self-axis stabilization by Carl Jung, meaning your conscious mind aligned with your deeper truth. You're no longer performing for external validation. You're expressing from internal conviction. Their raised eyebrow doesn't activate your inferiority complex because you've transcended the need for their approval. This transformation involves energy reclamation. When you stop explaining, you reclaim the psychic energy you've been hemorrhaging for years. But this isn't just about having more energy. It's about qualitative transformation. That reclaimed libido undergoes what Jung termed sublimation. It transforms from reactive emotional energy into creative, constructive force. Your conversations deepen because they're chosen, not compulsive. Your work sharpens because it flows from authentic motivation, not people-pleasing anxiety. You're no longer a psychological reactor, scrambling to manage others' emotions. You're a conscious creator, generating reality from your authentic center. Jung's concept of individuation is fundamentally about this transformation. It's the journey of what he called ego self-realization, aligning your everyday personality with your deeper archetypal nature. Over-explaining was your ego's desperate strategy to control others' perceptions, to manage the external world through verbal manipulation. But every time you choose silence, you activate self-regulation principle. Your psyche's innate wisdom guides you toward authentic expression. It's like removing layers of false identity until only your essential nature remains. This metamorphosis also transforms your relational patterns through projection withdrawal. When you stop explaining, you stop absorbing others' psychological material. The friends who thrived on your reactivity, who needed your justifications to avoid their own self-examination, begin to fall away. But those who remain, they relate to your authentic self, not your people-pleasing persona. Jung saw this as conscious relationship, like connection based on genuine recognition rather than mutual neurosis. Your silence creates space for psychological encounter that transform both parties. But individuation isn't a smooth journey. When you start living authentically, the world pushes back. You encounter the collective's resistance to consciousness. You'll face what feels like a coordinated campaign to pull you back into old patterns. People will test your boundaries, question your motives, even sabotage your progress. In the next part, we'll explore how to navigate this resistance and emerge stronger on the other side. You've begun your transformation. You're choosing silence, reclaiming your energy, aligning with your authentic self. But let's be honest about what happens next. The world doesn't celebrate your awakening. Jung called this phase initiation through ordeal. The inevitable testing that comes when you break free from collective expectations. Your family becomes more demanding, your colleagues more passive-aggressive, your friends more manipulative. Why? Because your silence threatens their psychological homeostasis. They've organized their entire relational structure around your explanations, and now that foundation is cracking. Are you prepared for the storm that comes with freedom? Picture this. You stop responding to guilt-tripping texts with long justifications. Instead, you send a simple, "I understand you're upset." Your friend escalates, accusing you of being cold. uncaring, not the person they used to know. This is shadow constellation, when your authenticity activates others' repressed material. They're not angry at your silence. They're confronting their own fear of abandonment, their terror of being truly seen without their manipulation tactics. Jung warned, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Your acceptance of yourself terrifies those who haven't begun their own journey." Then comes the guilt campaign. "You've changed," they say, voice heavy with disappointment. "You used to care about people." This is psychological warfare disguised as concern. Jung called it moral inflation. They position themselves as righteous while casting you as the villain. But here's the truth. You haven't become less caring. You've become more discerning. You're no longer a bottomless well of explanation and justification. Your care has boundaries now, and boundaries feel threatening to those accustomed to unlimited access to your psychological resources. Remember, their discomfort with your growth is not your responsibility to manage. Second, practice what Jung says, compassionate detachment. You can feel empathy for their discomfort without absorbing their projection. Their fear is real, but it's not your emergency. Third, find your tribe, others who've walked this path of conscious authenticity. Jung emphasized that individuation doesn't mean isolation, it means conscious community. The storm will pass, but only if you hold your ground. Each time you resist the pullback to over-explanation, you strengthen your psychological immune system. You become less susceptible to manipulation, more aligned with your authentic nature. Those who truly belong in your life will adapt to your growth. Those who don't will naturally fall away, creating space for relationships based on genuine respect rather than psychological exploitation. In our final part, we'll explore what life looks like on the other side of this transformation. You've stopped explaining. You've weathered the storm of resistance. You've chosen silence, reclaimed your energy, and initiated your individuation process. Now, what does it look like to live this way, not just for a moment, but as your fundamental mode of being? Welcome to the Jungian vision, the authentic existence, where your choices don't need justification because they emerge from your integrated self. This is rebellion against collective possession, the societal trance that demands constant explanation, justification, and conformity. What could your life become if you stopped justifying it to anyone? When you stop explaining, you reclaim your individual authority. You start small. Don't reply to guilt-tripping texts immediately. Take time for yourself without manufacturing reasons. Say, "I'm not available," without elaboration. These aren't selfish acts. They're individualization exercises, practices that strengthen your psychological core. Jung observed that when you align with your authentic nature, synchronicity increases. Meaningful coincidences that guide you toward your destiny. This life isn't about isolation. It's about conscious relationship. Your time becomes sacred, invested in connections that honor your authentic self. Your relationships deepen because they're based on genuine recognition, not manipulation or obligation. Your work, your creativity, your very presence, they all carry the Jungian idea of numinous quality, because you're no longer diluting yourself with justifications. You're relating from your integrated wholeness, not your fragmented personas. Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart." The unexplained life is that vision actualized. So, start today, right now. Make a commitment to live unexplained, not to hide, but to honor your authentic nature. But here's what I want to know. Which part of this message hit you the hardest? Was it realizing how much energy you've been losing through over-explaining? Or seeing how others use your justifications to control you? Now tell me in the comments. Are you ready to stop explaining yourself and start living from your center? Are you willing to embrace the discomfort of being misunderstood in service of your psychological freedom? If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, "I choose conscious silence." Let's see how many here are ready for this transformation. This is your life. Stop explaining it. Start living it.